She was rejected on a Christmas blind date until a little girl walked over and said, "Can we join you?" Emma stood in front of her bedroom mirror, carefully adjusting the red scarf around her neck. The soft glow of her Christmas lights reflected in the glass, creating tiny twinkling stars across the room. Outside, the early December evening had settled in, and a light dusting of snow covered the rooftops. Emma loved this time of year, the gentle quiet that seemed to wrap the world in a blanket of peace, the smell of cinnamon and pine in the air, and the sound of carolers singing cheerful songs in the streets. But tonight her heart felt a little nervous under that blanket of holiday cheer. Her friend Rachel had insisted she try something new this Christmas. "Emma," Rachel had said just a few days ago, "you have to meet someone. I promise, he's really nice." "You won't regret it." Emma had hesitated at first. Blind dates were something she usually avoided. She liked knowing what to expect, and opening herself up to someone she had never met made her stomach twist in nervous knots. But Rachel's enthusiasm was infectious, and something about the idea of stepping out of her comfort zone sparked a little hope in her heart. Now, standing in front of the mirror, Emma smoothed her hair and took a deep breath. She had chosen her favorite green dress, soft and warm, with tiny white snowflakes stitched along the hem. It was festive but simple, just enough to feel special without feeling overdone. She added a pair of delicate gold earrings, and finished with soft brown boots that would keep her feet warm during the short walk to the restaurant. The restaurant itself was a small, cozy place on the corner of Maple Street, known for its warm, welcoming atmosphere and homemade desserts. Emma had been there before with friends, but never on a date. The windows were fogged slightly from the warmth inside, and the glow from the Christmas lights strung along the roof created a soft golden halo around the entrance. She imagined how it would feel to sit there with someone new, the smell of roasted chestnuts and fresh bread filling the air, laughter floating between tables. The thought made her heart beat a little faster. Emma grabbed her coat and scarf, slipped on her gloves, and stepped out into the crisp winter air. Snowflakes fell gently, dusting her hair and eyelashes. She inhaled deeply. The cold, fresh air made her feel alive and awake. It had been a difficult year for her, filled with long days at work, evenings spent alone with a good book, and quiet weekends that often felt emptier than she liked to admit. She had spent Christmas Eve the previous year curled up on her couch, watching old holiday movies and eating too much chocolate, feeling like something was missing. Tonight felt different. Tonight she wanted to take a chance, to try something new, and maybe, just maybe, to find a spark that had been missing in her life. As she approached the restaurant, she noticed how busy it was for a Christmas Eve evening. Couples held hands across small tables, friends laughed over steaming mugs of cocoa, and families shared quiet moments with young children tugging at the edges of their coats. Emma felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She hoped she would fit in, hoped she would be able to talk and laugh without feeling awkward. She pushed the door open and was immediately greeted by the warmth of the restaurant, the soft glow of candles on every table, and the cheerful sounds of a string quartet playing gentle Christmas tunes in the corner. A hostess smiled at her and guided her to a table near the window, offering her a menu. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she took a seat, partly from the cold and partly from anticipation. She looked around, noticing the other diners, the way the lights reflected off the polished wood, and the little details that made the place feel alive. The air smelled of roasted turkey, baked apples, and cinnamon, a perfect mix of holiday scents. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves, and reminded herself that this was just a date, a chance to meet someone new. Nothing more, nothing less. Minutes passed, and Emma found herself glancing at the door more often than she cared to admit. She watched couples arriving, some laughing, some exchanging shy glances, and wondered if her own date would arrive soon. Her mind drifted back to Rachel's words, "Just be yourself, Emma." That's all he'll ever need. She liked the sound of that, but nerves made her stomach flutter in a way that made her question whether being herself was enough. Finally, the door opened, and a man stepped in, checking the room as if searching for someone. Emma's heart skipped a beat. This had to be him. He was tall, wearing a dark coat and a scarf that looked like it had been carefully chosen to match his outfit. There was a polite smile on his face, though his eyes seemed slightly distracted. He spotted her and nodded, approaching the table. "Emma?" he asked, his voice polite if not a little hesitant. "Yes," she said, standing up to shake his hand. "Hi, it's nice to meet you." "I'm Mark," he said, offering a small smile. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," she replied, sliding back into her seat. They exchanged a few polite words as they settled in, but Emma quickly noticed something unsettling. Mark's eyes kept darting toward his phone, his posture stiff as if he were trying to be somewhere else. She tried to start a conversation about the decorations, the music, and the warmth of the restaurant, but his answers were short and distracted. He nodded along but rarely added anything of his own. Emma felt her heart sink slightly. She had built up hope for this evening, imagining laughter and light conversation, but instead, she found herself talking into a quiet void. Despite the awkwardness, Emma refused to let her disappointment show. She smiled, asked questions, and tried to keep the conversation flowing, hoping that Mark would open up a little more. But as the minutes passed, she realized that he seemed uninterested in connecting. He checked his phone again, his eyes scanning messages, and his replies grew even shorter. Emma's heart ached, a small pang that made her chest tighten. She had imagined this night differently, filled with warmth, laughter, and maybe even a little magic. Instead, it felt like a rehearsal she hadn't auditioned for. When the server brought over their drinks and menus, Emma tried to focus on the small joys around her, the glow of the candle, the soft music, the gentle hum of conversation. She reminded herself that this was just one evening, one experience. It didn't define her worth, her charm, or her ability to find love. She smiled politely at Mark, asking him about his Christmas traditions, but his answers were brief, almost dismissive. The warmth of the restaurant contrasted sharply with the chill creeping into her heart. Emma thought back to all the Christmases she had spent alone, reading stories by the fireplace, baking cookies with her mother, and singing along with old holiday records. She had always loved the season, loved the magic of small gestures, twinkling lights, and cozy evenings. But tonight, she realized that magic wasn't in the decorations or the music. It was in the people, in the connections they made. And for the first time that evening, she felt the sting of loneliness more sharply than she had in years. She took a deep breath and reminded herself not to let the evening go to waste. Even if the date wasn't what she hoped for, she could still enjoy the restaurant, the music, and the smell of fresh bread. She could still smile at strangers and share in the small moments of human connection that often went unnoticed. She could still be herself, and that, she told herself firmly, was enough. The evening continued with polite conversation and awkward silences. Emma tried to laugh at Mark's occasional jokes, hoping to spark some warmth, but the effort felt one-sided. Her heart ached with the realization that sometimes, despite hope and effort, things didn't work out the way one imagined. She felt the weight of disappointment pressing gently against her, like the cold winter air outside, reminding her that not every Christmas story ended in laughter and joy. Finally, as the waiter approached to clear the table, Mark looked at her politely but without warmth. "I think it's best if we call it a night," he said, his voice soft but firm. Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She forced a polite smile and thanked him for the evening, even though a part of her wanted to cry quietly in the corner. As she stepped outside, the crisp winter air hit her face. The snow had thickened slightly, covering the sidewalks in a soft, white blanket. Emma wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck and took a slow, steadying breath. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, her heart heavy with disappointment, but she refused to let it ruin the night entirely. She reminded herself that this was not the end of her story. It was just one evening, one experience, and it did not define her worth or her ability to find connection. With a quiet sigh, Emma began walking down the snow-dusted street, her boots crunching softly against the icy pavement. She thought about the warmth waiting at home, the familiar glow of her Christmas lights, and the possibility of finding joy in the small, unexpected moments that the world sometimes offered. And though her heart felt a little bruised, a small spark of hope flickered within her, ready to guide her toward whatever came next. Emma's footsteps echoed softly against the snow-covered street as she walked away from the restaurant. The cold air stung her cheeks, but it was a welcome distraction from the ache in her heart. She tried to shake off the disappointment, telling herself that tonight was just a single evening, one night among many, and that she wasn't defined by someone else's lack of interest. But the sting of rejection was heavier than she expected. She paused for a moment and looked up at the sky. The clouds had parted slightly, and the moon cast a pale, gentle glow over the rooftops. Snowflakes continued to drift lazily through the night, landing on her coat and eyelashes. For a brief second, she allowed herself to appreciate the quiet beauty of the winter evening, the soft hush that only snow can bring. But then, reality returned. The warmth she had imagined for the evening, laughter, connection, the excitement of meeting someone new, had turned cold and distant. Emma's mind wandered back to the brief moments at the table where she had tried so hard to connect with Mark. She remembered his polite smiles, the way his eyes often drifted toward his phone, and the lack of warmth in his voice. She replayed the words he had used to let her down gently, telling her that there was no connection. At first, she had tried to be understanding, reminding herself that not everyone would be a perfect match. But as the words echoed in her mind, she felt a small pang of loneliness, sharper than she expected. She continued walking, her boots crunching softly against the thin layer of snow on the pavement. Emma passed by shop windows glowing with Christmas lights and decorations. Children pressed their faces against the glass, pointing excitedly at toy displays, while parents followed behind, smiling at their joy. She smiled faintly at the scene, appreciating the warmth and happiness in the world, even if it didn't touch her own heart at the moment. As she turned a corner, the streets became quieter, and the sound of the city faded into a gentle hum. She found herself thinking about her life over the past year. It had been filled with long workdays, evenings spent alone, and quiet weekends that often felt too empty. She had poured herself into her job, her hobbies, and her small circle of friends, but the longing for a deeper connection had grown stronger, especially during the holidays. Christmas had always been her favorite time of year, a season of warmth, hope, and togetherness. And yet tonight had reminded her that sometimes, even during the most magical season, loneliness could creep in unexpectedly. Emma stopped at a small park bench, her breath forming tiny clouds in the cold air. She sat down, wrapping her coat tightly around her. For a moment, she allowed herself to feel the disappointment fully, acknowledging the sadness that had been quietly building throughout the evening. She had hoped for something special tonight, a spark of connection, a shared laugh, maybe even a memory she could hold onto with warmth. But instead, she had left the restaurant with a hollow feeling, her heart heavier than when she had arrived. She closed her eyes and let the quiet night settle around her. The park was empty except for the soft whisper of the wind through the trees and the occasional rustle of a stray branch. The snow on the ground reflected the pale light of the moon, creating a peaceful, almost magical glow. For a moment, Emma allowed herself to imagine what it might have been like if the date had gone differently. If Mark had been genuinely interested, if they had laughed together, shared stories, and discovered common dreams. But reality was different, and she knew she had to accept that. Opening her eyes, Emma noticed a small, crumpled piece of paper near the bench. She picked it up and smiled faintly at the childish drawing on it, a little snowman with a crooked hat and a stick arm waving. It reminded her of simpler times, of the excitement of Christmas as a child, when hope and imagination had felt endless. A small warmth sparked inside her, a reminder that joy could still be found in unexpected places, even if it didn't come in the way she had imagined tonight. After a few moments, Emma stood up and continued walking, determined not to let the evening end entirely on a note of sadness. She passed a few small shops that were still open, their windows glowing with light and decorated with garlands and ornaments. The smell of freshly baked cookies and cinnamon rolls drifted into the street, and she allowed herself to inhale deeply, savoring the comforting scent. It was a small reminder that the world still held beauty, warmth, and little moments of happiness. As she rounded another corner, she saw a group of carolers singing near a lamppost. Their voices were soft but clear, blending together in familiar Christmas melodies. Emma paused to listen, letting the music wash over her. For a moment, she felt lighter, the sadness easing slightly as she allowed herself to be carried by the harmony and joy of the season. She realized that even though her evening hadn't gone as planned, there were still small gifts to be found. The quiet beauty of a snowy night, the innocence of a child's drawing, the sound of voices singing in the cold. Emma's thoughts then drifted back to her own childhood Christmases. She remembered decorating the tree with her mother, the smell of pine needles mixing with freshly baked cookies. She remembered wrapping small presents with care, writing her own little notes, and sneaking glances at the twinkling lights on the tree late at night. Those memories were full of warmth, love, and hope, a sharp contrast to the awkward date she had just endured. Yet they reminded her that joy could still be found, even when disappointment appeared. Feeling a little braver, Emma decided to walk a bit further, following the quiet street until she reached a small cafe she often visited on chilly nights. The warm light spilling from the windows made her heart lift slightly. She pushed the door open, and the bell above it jingled softly. Inside, the smell of coffee and baked goods wrapped around her like a comforting hug. A few patrons were quietly enjoying their drinks, some reading, some chatting softly with friends. Emma chose a seat by the window, glad for the warmth and the chance to sit quietly for a moment. She ordered a hot chocolate with whipped cream, the sweet, creamy drink promising a little comfort after the evening she had endured. As she waited, she allowed herself to reflect on the lessons of the night. She realized that rejection, though painful, was a part of life. Not every encounter would lead to joy or connection, but each experience held the possibility of growth, of learning more about herself and the people around her. She had shown courage by going on the date, by hoping, by opening herself to the possibility of connection. That courage was something to be proud of, even if the outcome hadn't been what she wanted. When her hot chocolate arrived, Emma took a slow sip, savoring the warmth spreading through her hands and her chest. She watched the snow fall softly outside, the lights reflecting in tiny sparkles on the wet pavement. She felt a quiet sense of peace settle over her. Tonight hadn't gone as she had hoped, but she realized that it didn't have to define her entire Christmas. There were still moments of beauty, warmth, and even a little magic, waiting to be discovered if she was willing to look for them. As she finished her drink, Emma pulled her coat tighter around her and stepped back into the snowy street. Her heart still a little heavy, her cheeks still pink from the cold, she walked with a renewed sense of calm. She reminded herself that sometimes, life's little disappointments were just paving the way for something unexpected, something even more meaningful than she could imagine. She didn't know what the night still held, but she felt ready to find out, one small step at a time. And so, with quiet determination and a heart that refused to give up hope, Emma continued walking through the peaceful, snow-covered streets. She didn't yet know that her evening was far from over, that a small, unexpected encounter was about to change everything. But for now she focused on the simple joys, the snowflakes drifting through the air, the warm glow of the streetlights, the sound of distant laughter, and allowed herself to be present in the moment. For Emma, this was the beginning of a Christmas Eve she would never forget, even if it didn't unfold the way she had imagined. The snow had begun to settle more heavily now, forming a soft white carpet over the streets. Emma walked slowly, her boots making gentle crunching sounds as she traced the familiar path toward the corner of Maple Street. Her mind was still heavy with the evening's disappointment. The date had left her feeling hollow, but she tried to remind herself that life had a way of surprising people in the smallest, most unexpected ways. She inhaled the crisp winter air, letting it fill her lungs and give her a sense of clarity. The night was quiet, except for the occasional distant sound of laughter or the jingling bell of a shop door opening and closing. As she neared a small plaza, she noticed a soft glow coming from a lamppost, surrounded by benches dusted with fresh snow. Emma decided to rest there for a moment, hoping to gather herself before making the short walk home. She lowered herself carefully onto the cold wooden bench, pulling her scarf closer around her neck. Her hands, tucked into her coat pockets, were still cold, and she rubbed them together gently. She watched the snowflakes drift lazily in the air, swirling softly in the golden light of the street lamp. Emma's thoughts drifted again to the events of the evening. She had felt a flicker of hope when Mark had walked into the restaurant that maybe tonight could be different, that maybe this time something would spark. But the hope had faded quickly, replaced with an awkwardness and a distance she couldn't bridge. She tried to focus on the good things, the warm glow of the restaurant, the soft music, the festive decorations. But the sting of rejection lingered stubbornly, as though it had planted itself in her chest and refused to leave. She leaned back against the bench and closed her eyes for a moment, letting the quiet of the night surround her. Her mind wandered to all the small joys she had overlooked in the rush of the evening. The snow had been falling gently all night, the lights in the windows of nearby buildings twinkling like little stars, and the air carried the faint scent of baked goods from a nearby cafe. These were the little things, Emma realized, that could bring warmth even when the heart felt heavy. As she opened her eyes and looked down at her hands resting in her lap, she noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. A small shadow had appeared on the snow-covered ground, and a tiny voice, tentative but clear, spoke up. "Excuse me, hi." Emma turned toward the voice and saw a little girl, no more than 7 or 8, standing a few feet away. She had bright, curious eyes and rosy cheeks, and she was bundled up in a purple coat that seemed slightly too big for her small frame. Her mittens were patterned with tiny snowflakes, and her little boots left small prints in the snow. Emma felt a smile begin to form on her face despite the lingering sadness. "Hello," Emma said softly, her voice warm. "Are you okay out here?" The girl nodded shyly, her hands clasped together in front of her. "Yes, but can I sit with you?" she asked hesitantly, her words tumbling out in a small rush. "My mom is in that cafe over there," she added, pointing to the warm glow in the distance, "and she said I could come out, but I didn't want to be alone." Emma's heart softened immediately. There was something about the girl's innocence, her gentle courage, that melted the heaviness in her chest. "Of course," Emma said with a smile, patting the space next to her on the bench. "Come sit down. I'd love to keep you company." The little girl's face brightened instantly, and she ran over to sit beside Emma. The bench creaked slightly under the girl's small weight, and she shivered a little in the cold. Emma gently adjusted the scarf around her shoulders, making sure the girl was comfortable. "What's your name?" Emma asked. "Lily," the girl replied proudly. "What's yours?" "Emma," she said, smiling. "It's very nice to meet you, Lily." Lily looked around at the snow and the streetlights, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's so sparkly tonight," she said softly, pointing at the falling snow. "I love snow, it makes everything magical." Emma couldn't help but laugh quietly at Lily's description. "You're right," she said. "It does make everything look magical." And sometimes magic comes when you least expect it. She glanced down at Lily, whose small face was glowing in the soft lamplight. Do you come out here often? Sometimes, Lily said, nodding. Mom says I can watch the snow before dinner. But usually I just play by myself. She paused, then added in a small voice, but it's nice to sit with someone. Emma felt a warmth bloom in her chest. There was an unexpected comfort in the simplicity of this moment, a small connection, free from expectations, free from judgment. She realized that in her sadness earlier, she had forgotten how much a simple conversation, a shared smile, or the presence of another person could make the world feel lighter. Would you like to tell me about your favorite part of Christmas? Emma asked gently. Lily's eyes lit up, and she leaned in a little closer. I love decorating the tree, she said excitedly. I get to hang all the ornaments, and my favorite one is a little star that sparkles a lot. My mom says I have to be careful, but I try really hard. And we bake cookies too. Chocolate chip ones are my favorite, but I like sugar cookies because I get to put sprinkles on them. Emma laughed softly at Lily's enthusiasm. That sounds wonderful. I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Decorating the tree, putting on ornaments, and eating too many cookies before dinner, she added with a wink. Lily giggled, covering her mouth with her mittened hand. I do that too, but then my mom tells me not to eat too many or I'll spoil my dinner. As they talked, Emma found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't since she left the restaurant. She shared little stories from her own childhood Christmases, the fun of wrapping presents for her family, the excitement of sneaking glances at the lights on the tree, and the warmth of sitting by the fireplace with a good book while the snow fell outside. Lily listened intently, asking questions and sharing her own small experiences. Time seemed to pass more quickly than Emma realized. The cold no longer felt as sharp, and the loneliness that had weighed on her heart felt lighter with each shared laugh and story. She realized that this small encounter, this simple moment of connection, was giving her something far more meaningful than a formal date could have. It was reminding her that joy and warmth could be found in unexpected ways, and that sometimes people came into your life to teach you exactly that. Lily, noticing Emma's smile, tilted her head curiously. Are you happy now? She asked softly, her small voice full of genuine curiosity. Emma looked at her and nodded, feeling a surprising sense of gratitude. Yes, Lily, I am. Talking to you has made me very happy. She smiled, reaching out to ruffle the little girl's hair gently. Thank you for coming over to sit with me. Lily beamed, her eyes sparkling like tiny stars. I'm glad I did, she said, snuggling a little closer under her coat. The sound of laughter and footsteps from the nearby cafe reminded them both that the night was still moving forward, that other people were nearby enjoying their own moments. But for Emma, this little bubble of shared warmth was enough. She felt lighter, her heart quieter, and for the first time that evening, she allowed herself to simply enjoy the moment without thinking of disappointment or regret. You know, Emma said thoughtfully, watching the snow drift past the lamppost, sometimes the best moments come when you least expect them. Tonight was supposed to be something else, but now, sitting here with you, it feels just right. Lily smiled knowingly as if she understood perfectly. I think Christmas is good at that, she said. It's full of surprises. Emma nodded, feeling a soft laugh escape her lips. Yes, it really is. The conversation continued, the two of them talking about favorite colors, the best Christmas songs, and even little adventures in the snow. Emma felt a sense of peace and happiness she hadn't felt all evening. She realized that joy didn't always come from grand gestures or carefully planned dates. It often came quietly, softly, in moments like this, when a stranger, or a little girl, chose to share a bit of her world with someone else. As the snow continued to fall, Emma felt the heaviness of earlier melt away completely. She had been rejected, yes, but she had found something more meaningful than she had imagined. A real connection, pure and genuine, with someone whose joy was contagious and whose trust in the world was inspiring. For the first time that night, she truly felt the warmth of Christmas, the comfort of human connection, the sparkle of hope, and the gentle magic of small, unexpected moments. And so, as they sat together on the snow-dusted bench, talking and laughing softly, Emma knew something remarkable had happened. The night had changed direction entirely, not because of anything she had planned, but because life, in its quiet and unpredictable way, had introduced her to a little girl with big eyes, a curious heart, and the courage to walk over and simply ask, "Can we sit with you?" The snow continued to fall softly, wrapping the quiet street in a gentle blanket of white. Emma and Lily sat side by side on the small park bench, the lamppost casting a warm golden glow over them. The cold no longer bothered them much. The simple act of talking, sharing stories, and laughing together had created an invisible warmth that flowed between them. Emma realized that the earlier sadness and disappointment from her blind date felt almost distant now, replaced by a quiet, unexpected joy she hadn't anticipated that evening. Lily leaned forward slightly, her eyes wide with excitement. "Emma," she said, "do you like Christmas stories?" Emma smiled and nodded. "I love them, especially the ones with surprises and happy endings. Why do you ask?" "Because," Lily began, her voice soft and hopeful, "I think Christmas stories are kind of like real life. Sometimes you think something will happen one way, but then something else happens and it's even better." She paused for a moment, looking up at the sky, and then added, "That's what I think happened to us tonight." Emma felt her heart swell. There was something incredibly touching about Lily's innocence and her way of seeing the world. Here was a little girl who could understand the quiet magic of life better than many adults she knew. She reached out and took Lily's mittened hand gently. "You know, Lily, I think you're right. Sometimes the best moments in life are the ones we don't plan, and sitting here with you feels like one of those moments." Lily grinned, her eyes sparkling in the light of the lamppost. "Really?" she asked. "It feels like magic, doesn't it?" Emma laughed softly. "Yes, it really does." She looked at the snow falling around them and let herself enjoy the serenity of the moment. She realized that the evening had changed entirely, not because of anything she had expected, but because of the little girl who had chosen to sit beside her. Emma's earlier hope of romance had faded, but in its place had come a different kind of connection, pure, genuine, and unexpectedly joyful. "Do you like playing in the snow?" Emma asked, noticing how Lily's eyes followed a flurry of flakes drifting lazily to the ground. Lily nodded eagerly. "I love it. I like making snow angels and building snowmen. Sometimes I try to make a snow fort, but it never stays up very long." She laughed, and Emma laughed along with her. It was a sound so full of life and joy that it made Emma's chest feel lighter, as if the weight of the evening had been lifted by something invisible. "Snow forts are hard to make," Emma said thoughtfully. "I tried once when I was your age. It took hours, and by the time I finished, most of it had melted or fallen down. But it was fun trying. That's what counts, right?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, it's fun to try even if it doesn't work perfectly. That's why I like Christmas too. You can try things, and even if it's not perfect, it still feels wonderful." Emma realized that Lily's perspective was simple yet profound. So many adults, including herself, often measured their happiness by perfection or expected outcomes. But here was a child who understood that joy could be found in effort, in presence, in the small moments that often went unnoticed. She felt a quiet sense of gratitude for Lily's company, and for the reminder that life didn't always have to be complicated to be meaningful. "What's your favorite Christmas memory?" Emma asked, genuinely curious. Lily thought for a moment, tilting her head and frowning slightly in concentration. She said slowly. "I think my favorite memory is last year. My dad helped me make a gingerbread house. It was kind of messy and some of the candy fell off and I got frosting on my nose, but I laughed the whole time. And my dad laughed too. I think that's why I liked it so much, because we laughed together. Emma's smile grew wider. That sounds perfect. Sometimes laughter really is the best part of Christmas, and it's even better when you share it with someone you care about. She reached out and lightly touched Lily's mitten. It's wonderful that you remember it so clearly. That kind of memory stays with you for a long time. Lily looked thoughtful for a moment, then brightened. Do you have a favorite memory too? She asked. Emma nodded slowly. Yes, when I was little, my grandmother used to bake cookies with me every Christmas. She let me lick the spoon, even when it was messy, and we would sit by the fireplace afterward, sipping hot chocolate and telling stories. I remember feeling so safe and happy. It was like the whole world was perfect for a little while. Lily's eyes widened and she leaned a little closer. I want to have memories like that when I grow up, she said. I want to remember the happiness, not the sad things. Emma's heart ached a little at the honesty of Lily's words, but it also warmed. She realized that children had a way of teaching lessons in the simplest ways, about joy, hope, and resilience. She squeezed Lily's hand gently. You will, Lily. And the wonderful thing is that you're already making happy memories just by enjoying these small moments. Even sitting here in the snow tonight is one of those memories. Lily giggled. It really is. I'm going to tell my mom all about it when she comes out. Emma laughed softly. The idea of recounting this unexpected friendship to a parent made the evening feel even more magical. She realized that, in all the disappointment and awkwardness of her earlier date, life had given her something far more valuable, a genuine connection, unplanned but perfect in its simplicity. As the evening grew colder, Emma suggested they stand up and take a short walk together. Lily eagerly agreed, and the two of them strolled slowly along the snow-dusted street, leaving small footprints behind. The city seemed quieter now, the festive lights reflecting softly on the wet pavement. Emma noticed the way Lily's excitement made even the ordinary street feel magical. Every light, every snowflake, every faint sound of distant laughter became part of an invisible story they were sharing together. You know, Emma said after a moment, sometimes life surprises us when we least expect it. Tonight was supposed to be a date with someone else, but I feel like sitting here with you has been even better. Lily smiled, her small teeth showing in a wide grin. I think life likes surprises, she said. Especially at Christmas. Emma laughed softly, feeling a lightness in her chest she hadn't felt all evening. She realized that Lily's presence had shifted something inside her. The sadness, disappointment, and awkwardness of the date had been transformed into warmth, laughter, and hope. This tiny encounter, unexpected as it was, had reminded her of something she had almost forgotten: the simple joy of human connection, of being present with someone who cared, even in the smallest way. They wandered toward a small fountain in the plaza, the water frozen at the edges and sparkling under the streetlights. Lily tried to trace patterns in the snow with her mittens, giggling when a small pile crumbled under her fingers. Emma joined in, shaping the snow gently, feeling a childlike sense of fun she hadn't allowed herself to enjoy in years. They laughed together, the sound echoing softly across the quiet plaza, blending with the gentle whisper of snow falling around them. After a while, Lily glanced toward the cafe. My mom must be coming soon, she said. She'll want to see that I'm safe. Emma nodded, feeling a small pang at the thought of the evening ending but also gratitude for the time they had shared. I'm so glad you came over to sit with me, Lily, she said softly. This has been wonderful. You've made this Christmas Eve really special for me. Lily smiled shyly. And you made it special for me too, she said. Thank you, Emma. They stood together in the soft snow, sharing a quiet moment before heading back toward the cafe. Emma watched Lily run ahead, leaving small tracks in the snow as she approached her mother. For a brief moment, Emma allowed herself to simply breathe, to feel the lingering warmth of the connection they had made. It wasn't a love story in the way she had imagined earlier that evening, but it was something far more meaningful, a reminder that joy, comfort, and hope could arrive in the smallest, most unexpected ways. As Emma walked home afterward, her steps lighter than they had been when she left the restaurant, she thought about the lesson she had learned that night. Life didn't always follow the path she expected. Plans could fall apart, hopes could be disappointed, and rejection could hurt. But even then, beauty and connection could appear when least expected. Sometimes, it arrived in the form of a smile, a laugh, or a tiny hand reaching out in trust. Emma realized that this night had given her more than any carefully planned date ever could. It had given her perspective, joy, and a memory she would carry with her long after the snow had melted. She smiled softly, looking up at the sky as the snow continued to fall gently, and whispered to herself, "Thank you, Lily. You reminded me what Christmas is really about." And with that, Emma walked on, her heart warmer, her spirit lighter, and her mind open to the quiet magic of life, ready for whatever surprises awaited her next. The walk home was quiet, yet it felt different from the rest of Emma's evening. The snow had slowed, leaving soft, powdery drifts along the sidewalks. Streetlights reflected off the white ground, casting a gentle glow that made the city feel calm and almost magical. Emma pulled her coat tighter around her and took a slow, deep breath. For the first time that evening, her heart felt lighter. She thought about the unexpected moments with Lily, and a small, warm smile appeared on her face. Her mind replayed every detail of their encounter. The way Lily's eyes lit up when talking about Christmas decorations, the laughter they had shared, and the way her small, hopeful voice had reminded Emma that joy could exist even in the simplest moments. She realized that all the anxiety, nervousness, and disappointment she had felt earlier had not been wasted. It had prepared her to truly appreciate what life had unexpectedly offered. Emma thought back to the restaurant, to the awkwardness of her blind date, and to the polite but distant expressions on Mark's face. She no longer felt bitter or hurt. Instead, she felt grateful that the evening had turned out differently than she had imagined. What she had expected, a potentially romantic encounter that might end in disappointment, had been replaced by something far more meaningful, a genuine connection, the kind that left her heart feeling full rather than empty. As she walked, Emma reflected on the little lessons she had learned that night. She had been reminded that rejection did not define her worth. A single person's lack of interest was not a reflection of who she was. Instead, life had a way of teaching her patience, resilience, and the beauty of being open to unexpected experiences. The warmth she felt from Lily's company had shown her that connection could arrive in many forms, not always the ones we plan for or anticipate. The city streets were quiet, with only a few late-night walkers passing by, each lost in their own thoughts. Emma noticed the twinkling Christmas lights on shop windows and the gentle glow of candles in apartment windows. Each small display seemed to mirror the feelings she carried inside her: hope, warmth, and the subtle magic of small moments. She realized that she had spent too much of her life focusing on what she thought she wanted, instead of noticing the joy that could be found around her at any given moment. Her thoughts drifted back to Lily's words, "Sometimes the best moments come when you least expect them." Emma smiled, understanding now that this simple truth applied to more than just her evening. Life was unpredictable, full of surprises, and often delivered joy in ways she had never imagined. She felt a quiet gratitude for being open to the unexpected, for stepping out into the snow that night, and for allowing herself to embrace a moment of connection with a little girl who had appeared in her life like a gentle reminder of what truly mattered. Emma's pace slowed as she neared her apartment building. The familiar streets felt welcoming, the glow from the windows familiar and comforting. She looked down at her hands, still slightly chilled from the winter air, and reflected on how small gestures could carry incredible weight. Lily had approached her with a simple request to sit with her, and that act of courage had transformed Emma's evening entirely. She realized that sometimes the smallest actions, the tiniest sparks, were capable of producing the most profound effects on people's lives. As she climbed the steps to her apartment, Emma thought about her own approach to life. How often had she hesitated to take chances because of fear of disappointment? How many opportunities for joy had she missed because she expected happiness to arrive in a certain form? Tonight had shown her that she could be open, vulnerable, and still be rewarded, not necessarily in the way she had imagined, but in ways far more meaningful. The night had taught her that joy and connection often came from authenticity, from being present, and from noticing the world around her with an open heart. Emma unlocked her door and stepped inside, greeted by the familiar warmth of her apartment. The soft lights she had strung along the walls glowed gently, and the faint scent of cinnamon from the candle on the table filled the air. She took off her coat, hung it carefully, and sat down on her couch, letting herself sink into the cushions. For the first time that evening, she felt a sense of calm and contentment. She realized that her Christmas Eve had not been a failure as she had feared, but a story in itself, a story full of lessons, warmth, and hope. She thought about the feeling of connection she had experienced with Lily. It was pure, simple, and untainted by expectation. That moment had reminded her that love and joy came in many forms. Sometimes it was found in the laughter of a child, sometimes in the shared warmth of human kindness, and sometimes in the quiet magic of the season that went unnoticed until one chose to see it. She felt grateful for the lesson and knew she would carry it with her long after the snow had melted. Emma reflected on her own growth throughout the evening. She had started the night anxious and nervous, hoping for a connection that might have validated her in some way. She had felt hurt and awkward when things didn't go as planned. Yet, by the end of the night, she had discovered something even more valuable: the beauty of genuine connection, the joy of presence, and the small but powerful impact of kindness and courage. It had reminded her that life was rarely predictable, but if she stayed open to the possibilities, she could find happiness in places she never expected. She looked around her apartment, noticing the small decorations she had placed on the shelves, the twinkling lights on the tree, and the cozy blanket folded over the couch. For the first time that evening, she felt a sense of completeness, not because of someone else, but because she had experienced something meaningful on her own terms. Emma realized that happiness did not have to come from external validation. It could arise from being open to the present moment, from embracing life's surprises, and from appreciating the small, unexpected gifts it offered. As the evening wore on, Emma thought about the future. She no longer worried about dates or perfect plans. Instead, she thought about the countless small possibilities that life might offer: new friends, unexpected encounters, quiet moments of joy, and connections that might appear without warning. She felt a renewed sense of hope and a deep appreciation for the unpredictability of life. The evening had shown her that even when things did not go as she imagined, there was always a chance for magic, warmth, and genuine happiness. Emma took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. She realized that this night, though unexpected and unplanned, had given her something far more valuable than she could have anticipated. It had reminded her that rejection was not an ending, that disappointment could be transformed into joy, and that the simplest connections, like the one she had shared with Lily, could carry the deepest meaning. She smiled softly to herself, knowing that she would remember this Christmas Eve forever. She thought again about Lily and how a little girl's courage and curiosity had changed her evening. Emma felt a quiet gratitude for the reminder that kindness, openness, and genuine presence could make all the difference. She realized that she could carry that lesson into her life, allowing herself to embrace each day with a little more hope, a little more warmth, and a willingness to notice the unexpected magic around her. Emma settled into her couch with a blanket around her shoulders and a cup of tea in her hands. She gazed out the window at the snow-covered streets, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the night. Life, she realized, was full of surprises, both big and small. And sometimes, the moments that mattered most were not the ones we planned or expected. They were the ones that found us when we were open to them. She thought about all the people she had loved and lost, all the experiences that had shaped her, and all the moments that had brought her here, to this quiet, peaceful Christmas Eve. She realized that every twist, every turn, and every unexpected encounter had led her to this moment of clarity and contentment. And in that realization, she found hope, not just for the holidays, but for all the days to come. As she sipped her tea, Emma whispered softly to herself, "Thank you, Lily. You reminded me what Christmas is really about." She smiled, feeling a warmth that no disappointment could ever erase. Her heart was light, her spirit renewed, and her mind open to the quiet magic that life offered every day, if only she was willing to notice it. That night, Emma slept with a peaceful heart, knowing that even in unexpected moments, life had a way of bringing joy, connection, and hope. She had learned that the true magic of Christmas, and of life itself, was not in the perfect plans, but in the small, unexpected moments of kindness, courage, and connection that could transform an ordinary evening into something extraordinary. And so, as the snow continued to fall outside her window, Emma drifted into sleep with a heart full of gratitude, ready to embrace whatever the next day, and the rest of her life, might bring. She knew now that happiness was not something to chase or demand, but something to notice, appreciate, and share, one small, magical moment at a time.